Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are tackling something huge, a massive life choice, really, the journey to public office.
It's a big one.
And this deep dive is all about giving you a strategic entry point. We're pulling insights and, the core frameworks directly from the work of Dr. Allison Stevens and her Run to Win course.
Mm-hmm. And it's more than just a course. It's a whole system for deciding if you should run, and maybe even more importantly, where you should run.
Right.
So our mission today is to give you a foundation, how to do that self-assessment and really understand what these different elected roles actually do. That's how you build a campaign that can actually have a real impact.
Exactly. Because running for office is such a huge commitment. And if you get the wrong, if you run for a role that doesn't actually touch the issues you care about, that can just lead to so much frustration.
And wasted resources. Yeah.
We want to help you find the right chair at the right table.
Let's do it.
So let's start right at the beginning, that internal check-in. The framework says that if your motivation is like fame or ego or just having a fancy title, you're probably going to hit a wall pretty fast.
Oh, absolutely. The framework is crystal clear on this. The motivation, it has to come from a genuine, sometimes really gritty desire to serve.
Gritty, I like that.
Yeah, to represent constituents with, real integrity and honesty. She reminds people constantly that public service is not glamorous. It's long meetings. It's these complex budgets.
A lot of thankless work.
So much thankless work. But that purpose, that alignment with what your community actually needs, that's the fuel. That's what stops you from burning out.
Okay. So once you have that purpose, the next step is the logistical one. You have to match the issues you care about with the actual job.
Yeah.
So if you're passionate about, say, potholes and local zoning, aiming for the U.S. Senate is probably a bit of a disconnect.
It's a total disconnect. It's all about finding the leverage points. If your thing is, state professional licensing, and you run for a federal office, you've basically just handed your key issue over to someone else to solve.
Right. You have to know which government branch at which level actually holds the power to fix the problem you see.
That's it.
But here's the thing I think a lot of people struggle with. They feel like they don't have the right kind of experience. They see these career politicians and think, well, I haven't spent 20 years in policy.
And the framework challenges that directly. It does it with this idea of lived expertise.
Lived expertise. Tell me more about that.
It is probably one of the most powerful reframes in the whole process. The idea is to assess all your experience, not just your formal education or your 9-to-5 job.
So the other stuff.
The other stuff, that community work, the volunteering, the roles you take on, that's all deep, actionable knowledge.
Okay, but let's get practical. How does a candidate who's been, let's say, leading their neighborhood HOA for 10 years, how do they convince voters that that experience is just as valuable as, say, a law degree?
Well, that's where the critical thinking has to start, even before you run. You have to reframe your service. If you led an HOA, you're not just organizing potlucks. You have real expertise in budget negotiation, in finding compromise between neighbors who disagree, in understanding local codes and zoning, managing infrastructure. Those are the exact skills you need to be a state legislator or a city council member.
So you're translating it.
You're translating it. You're articulating how that grassroots leadership is actually governance experience.
So the big message here is don't discount the complexity of organizing a church group or running a local nonprofit.
Never. That's management. It's consensus building. It's budget experience. You're already bringing that to the table. It proves you're committed to the public good before you even get into politics.
Okay, so we've gone from the internal check to the external, understanding the actual terrain. And the framework gives a great little civics refresher. It reminds us of the hierarchy.
Right.
You've got local and municipal government handling things like parks and waste management. Then the state level for bigger things like licenses and, this is key, the budget that actually funds those local operations.
And then way up top is the federal government dealing with the big national issues like privacy, the military, airlines, things like that.
Let's zoom in on those state roles, though, because that's often where people feel the most direct, tangible impact in their daily lives.
For sure. So let's start with the state governor, the chief executive.
The CEO of the state, basically.
Pretty much. They're signing or vetoing bills, managing this huge executive branch, and they kick off the whole budget process. They really set the tone for everything.
But you and I were talking about this before we started. The state legislators, the state Senate and House. This is where things get really interesting.
Oh, yeah. They craft the laws, of course, but their most significant most concentrated power is something we call the power of the purse.
And this is so important for anyone focused on community well-being. Explain why the power of the purse is such a game changer.
Because approving the state budget isn't just a formality, it determines the reality on the ground.
Okay.
When legislators approve that budget, they're deciding how much money goes to every single local service. We're talking nutrition support for families, funding for local schools, mental health services, roads,
Everything.
everything. If a service in your town is underfunded, chances are it's because the state legislature made that decision in the budget. They control the flow of resources into your daily life.
That completely reframes the job. It's not just about passing these abstract bills. It's about controlling the lifeblood of the community.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, let's talk about a role with immense legal power.
Yeah.
The State Attorney General, or AG.
The chief legal officer. And the framework really highlights why this is such a critical office, especially for vulnerable populations, people of color, people with disabilities. This is where you can drive systemic change through the courts.
And the course gives some really potent examples of that power.
It does. I mean, the AG has the power to prosecute officials. We all saw that with Keith Ellison in Minnesota, securing the conviction of the officer who murdered George Floyd.
Right, a huge use of civil rights authority.
Massive. And on the other side of things, the AG has incredible consumer protection power. We've seen groups of AGs across the country band together to take legal action against drug companies for overcharging for things like insulin.
So if your passion is civil rights or consumer protection, the AG role is a primary lever for change.
It's proactive legal enforcement,
Yeah.
not just policy. It is often the last line of defense for civil liberties at the state level.
Okay, what's next?
Then you've got the Secretary of State.
Mhm.
They manage elections, state records, government transparency. And, post-2020, this role has gone from being kind of a quiet back office job
To front and center.
to being right on the front lines of defending the integrity of our entire democratic process. It's an incredibly prominent role now.
And then to round out the state execs, we have the state treasurer.
Right, who handles the state's actual money. Managing investments, debt, cash flow. It's not glamorous, but keeping the state financially stable is their whole job.
So moving up to the federal level for a moment, we've got the House of Representatives,
Who are tied very closely to their specific districts and what their constituents need.
and then the U.S. Senators, who represent the entire state. The scope is broader, but the framework makes a really important point about the unique power the Senate has.
It does. The Senate holds these ultimate check and balance powers. They're the ones who confirm presidential appointments. We're talking federal judges, cabinet secretaries.
Huge.
And they ratify international treaties. They're also the body that conducts impeachment trials. These powers mean the Senate is often focused less on, local district issues and more on the long-term structural direction of the country.
Okay, so we found our motivation, we found the right office. Now we have to talk about the toolkit. The skills you need not just to run a campaign, but to actually govern. The first one is a big one, effective communication.
Yes, but the definition here is so important. It's not about how eloquent you are or how big your vocabulary is. It's about what the audience hears.
What the audience hears.
Authenticity is key, but the goal is clarity. It's resonance.
You hear people talk about code switching in politics. Is that what we're talking about here?
No, not really. It's about refocusing, not changing your core self. If you're talking to a group of, say, farmers, using a bunch of technical legislative jargon just won't land.
Right.
You have to translate that policy into outcomes that matter to their lives. That refocusing makes sure your authentic message is actually heard and understood.
Okay, next up. Leadership and backbone. Seems pretty straightforward, but in the political world, what does that really mean?
It means an incredible amount of personal resilience. Leadership is making a tough call, one that might be unpopular, and then being the one to stand up and explain why you made it.
And the backbone part.
Backbone is the ability to hold on to your integrity when you are facing coordinated, often very personal political attacks, or even published lies.
Which takes a serious psychological toll. I imagine most candidates aren't really prepared for that level of scrutiny.
Very few are. It's the highest form of leadership, staying centered when the storm is raging around you. And you need that because it sets you up for the next skill, which the author calls the superpower of politics: critical thinking.
The ability to analyze data, evaluate arguments, scrutinize policy. Yeah, you can't govern without it.
Think about it. A single piece of legislation could be 500 pages long. It could impact millions of people. You need to be able to synthesize all that information, spot the biases, and weigh the intended consequences versus the actual ones.
If you can't do that, you're just relying on your staff's summaries.
Or worse, just partisan talking points. You're not actually leading.
And this leads directly to a really surprising but crucial point in the course, the reading challenge. It says, pretty bluntly, that a lot of officials just don't read the material they're given.
And that creates a massive governance risk. If you're voting on a state budget or a major environmental law without actually understanding the text, you are essentially governing blind.
But the framework is also empathetic here. It recognizes it's not always just laziness. Policy is complex. It could be a learning disability, or maybe English isn't your first language.
Exactly. And the solutions offered are really smart and practical.
What are they?
Well, the goal is just to understand the policy, whatever it takes. So the framework suggests using free, readily available screen readers to listen to the material. It even says to use AI summarization apps, but with a very specific instruction.
Oh.
Ask the AI to explain the document at a grade 8 reading level. It simplifies the complexity but keeps the core facts. Or, find a trusted, non-political person to just talk through it with you. The point is, find a way, never skip the knowledge part.
That is fantastic advice. It's all about accessibility. Okay, finally, we get to maybe the most complex skill of all, flexibility and growth.
This is the one that separates a career politician from a true public servant. It means being genuinely open to new ideas, willing to learn, and, this is the hard part, accepting that your initial position on something might have been wrong.
That requires a lot of humility.
A huge amount of humility. The highest expression of your duty as an elected official is being willing to change your position, even if it brings you negative press or political fallout.
Why?
Because your duty to the best interests of your constituents has to outweigh your personal pride. That kind of adaptability, that's what effective leadership really is.
Wow. This deep dive has been incredibly illuminating. I think if you're listening and you take 3 things away from this, let them be these. First, define your core motivation as honest public service. And know that your lived experience is powerful.
It's actionable expertise. Second, really understand the differences in these elected roles. Remember the incredible legal power of the state attorney general and the absolute financial control, that power of the purse that state legislators have over your community.
And third, cultivate those essential skills. Communication that focuses on what the audience hears, the backbone to withstand attacks, critical thinking is your superpower, and that vital ability to be adaptable and really truly understand the policy.
And, the framework reminds us that running for office is just one way to participate. So if success in office really depends on critical thinking and deep policy understanding, here is our final thought for you to take with you.
Let's hear it.
How can you start applying those skills right now? By attending city council meetings, reading your local school budget documents, and critically analyzing how your community is being governed today. Becoming a highly informed, active advocate now is the best possible preparation for being an effective elected leader tomorrow.